All right, those babies are in the oven. I'm back. I'm losing my light here. Hopefully you can see everything okay. And I grabbed a handful of almonds. I have a box full of chocolate and I did eat one, and I'm trying to keep myself from eating the rest because my little weight loss plan is not happening. I'm actually doing the opposite of losing weight. I found this glow in the dark paint, and I thought, how fun would it be to put a few glow in the dark freckles on this little space baby. I'm just using the tip of a toothpick, and I'm just covering glow in the dark paint on some of the larger freckles and spots and stars on his sweet head. Not too many, just some, just for fun. I mean, I might not even advertise it when I sell the baby. It might just be a surprise. There's a woman named Elena on one of my art forums. She's a nice person and a good artist. And she, kind of gave me this idea when I made the Abby. She said, ooh, maybe you should do some glow in the dark. So I remembered, and now I'm doing it. I think it'll be cool. Again, with my month of alternatives, it's just about playing. Sometimes you have to recharge your batteries, I always say, I gotta switch gears for a minute. I must sound like I switch gears a lot. And maybe I do. I know what I need to do to keep my batteries charged and my creative well full. I think if you do too much of one thing, the work gets stale, you burn out. And I think also, I want to say, I think this paint will dry a little bit clear, so I'm not too worried about where I'm putting this, really. Our weather has been super nice this week. It gets a little chilly after 4, but we have a little swim spa. I've talked about that before. And in the winter, I drain it because it's just too expensive to heat, and nobody really wants to go out and swim when it's pretty cold. But it's March, and it's been warm, and my little guy, who's still home from school, he hasn't gone back to school yet, he just needs things to do and ways to spend his energy. And the other day he said, could you fill up the pool? And I said, most certainly. If you will help me, I will do it. So we put on galoshes, and the pool will only drain itself so much. So there's water that sits at the bottom, and it collects leaves and bugs and dead things, and we keep chlorine in it, but it gets a little funky. So you have to actually go in there with pails and kind of bail the water out. And so that's what we did. We put on our galoshes on kind of a colder morning and went out there, and we bailed water and scrubbed the sides and cleaned it out and then filled it up again. And it takes about 2 days to get to temperature. We just got our solar put in, so I felt like, ooh, I think I'm gonna crank it up just a tiny bit more than we usually do and see what that does to our power bill. It's a luxury, but we save energy in other ways. I feel okay. And if it's, if the use is too much, I will turn it back down again. But he has been in that pool, I want to say like 6 times today, 3 times yesterday. He loves the water. All my kids do. And he's just so happy. I mean, we fill that thing up every year. I've never seen him this happy before about it. We keep saying, what do you want to do? He says, I want to go swim. So he's been out there a lot. We've had that pool for going on 14 years now. It was a big investment, but it's paid off. I think I talked before about when my daughter was sick, she needed to do some kind of physical therapy, and she had a belly tube, and because she was doing chemotherapy and radiation, we had to make sure she didn't get any infections, and nobody wanted to take the chance to let her use a community pool or a therapy pool. So I went down and bought this thing, financed it, and just didn't care. When you're going through that kind of thing, you just do whatever you got to do. And they craned it over our house and put it on a slab of cement out in our backyard. And we already had, you know, electricity out there, so they hooked it up, and she got to go in it a couple of times, and I also got to write it off. So, you know, it doesn't make it free, but it was a little bit of a plus to be able to write some of that off on our taxes. It was really expensive, and it's been so worth it. We've enjoyed it so much. I spent a lot of my pregnancy with my youngest guy in that pool. There we go. So then I'll charge him in the light, and then I'll let him dry, and then I may dab a little bit of varnish over him again, just so these don't wear off too quickly. And then I'll check it out and see if he glows. The other alternatives, I'm gonna do a couple of clown babies, a fairy, a pixie. I kind of want to do a Shrek baby. I'm thinking of doing the Big Joseph. I call him Big Joe. I'm thinking about doing him as Shrek and modifying him. Oh, there's another, well, I don't know how interesting it'll be, but that's another story. I bought some clay for modifying babies that I wanted to try out. And then when I went to go get it, because I was going to put ears on the baby with the horns, I was going to give her big fawn ears, but changed my mind at the last minute. And I couldn't find the clay anywhere. And I thought, maybe I didn't order it. Maybe I imagined it. And then I found the receipt and I said, no, I ordered it. And I mean, I have a lot of stuff in this studio, but I kind of know where everything's at. I'm pretty good at labeling things, and I'm a zone organizer. I knew it could only be in like 2 places, and it wasn't there. And I thought, my goodness, it drove me crazy for days. Now, I don't know if you believe in this stuff, but it's kind of scientifically proven that we do most of our brain work while we're sleeping. That might sound kind of silly and doesn't make much sense, but they've done a lot of studies, and we do a lot of our work while we're asleep. We figure things out. The autopilot part of our brain is very busy, so it might feel like we're sleeping and having some strange dreams, but it all means something. It helps us figure things out and sort through our problems. And you know how it is sometimes when you're trying too hard to figure something out and you take a little break, suddenly it comes to you. Sometimes you just need to relax and let things happen the way they're supposed to happen, and that's what happens while we're sleeping. That's why it's important to get a lot of sleep. I'm not a big sleeper, but when I do sleep, woo-wee, I'm busy. So I do this thing, and I know it might sound silly, but before I go to bed, if I have a baby and I don't know how to solve some kind of painting issue, it's too blue or it's too green or it's too gray, and I don't have the right hair, and I don't know where I'm going, and I'm stuck. So what I'll do is that before I go to sleep, I'll think about it. I'll fall asleep thinking about it. I'll say, okay, well, you know, I want to wake up with some ideas. I need to figure this out. And I, you know, kind of give my brain a job. And I say, your job tonight is to solve this problem. And I kid you not, 4:30 is my bewitching hour. I wake up and I go, oh, now I know what to do. Every single time. Maybe I imagine it. It's okay with me. It works. I'm good with it. So I had gone to bed and I went, I need to find that clay. I had already reordered some because I was so frustrated. But I really needed to find it. And for the life of me, I couldn't figure out where it could be. So I went to bed saying, okay, tomorrow's Find That Clay day. And I woke up at 4:30 and I had taken all my sculpting tools out of this tray and put them into this little red toolbox that used to be my son's. And it's so cool. It makes perfect sense. And I woke up and I said, check the toolbox. And I opened it up and there it was. I am not even kidding. I was like, yay! I'm walking around the house in a great mood and everybody's going, what's going on with you? Happy pants? And I'm like, I found my clay. And they're like, oh, that's great. Good for you. I'm kind of the odd one here in this casa. So sometimes the little things make me so very happy. I'm gonna go take the baby with the horns out of the oven and Superman out of the oven. And I think I'm gonna start rooting Mr. Superman's head. And then I'll put Mr. Robin in the oven. And since I'm kind of crazy high on tea, I think I'm just gonna hang out and chat with you guys while I do this. I'll be back in a minute. Well, it's been a little while and I've been hard at work working on this little baby here. I just got his eyelashes in and I'm gonna do those blue eyes. I put in 20s, but they just weren't sitting right. So I put in these 18s and they seem perfect. And his hair is a hot mess right now, but it actually turned out really good. It makes me wanna order more of this hair. I just don't remember where I got it. It's wet, so it looks really dark. So the sides don't blend really well, but I think once it dries, it's gonna be okay. This poor child's horns, they seem to be on there pretty good. I had a little bit of a glue leak here, but I think that's gonna be covered up by the hair I'm about to put on there. Rooting is such a messy job. It just gets everywhere. It's on me all day after I root. I usually try to change my shirt because if I cook, it'll get into food and my eyes. But this is the hair I'm going to root around her horns with. And it's just some mohair I processed a long time ago. Here it is. I have some that's a little bit more brown. I'm wondering if I should use that. Ooh, look at this. It says coarse red, brown, curly. You know what? That might be the ticket there. Ooh, it is very coarse. I'm not sure where this came from. I like it, whatever it is. It's just the right texture for putting around the horns because I don't want it to look like hair. I want it to look like fur. I don't want it to look puby, but I do want it to look kind of fuzzy and furry. Not like the hair on her head. So this is something new for me. It may work, it may not, but you can't know unless you try. If worst case, this doesn't look great. And it's starting to look okay. I'm gonna try this side and see if it's different. Rooting Mr. Kal-El's hair, and I forgot that I was going to turn the camera on, and I forgot about it because I started watching or listening to something on my computer. I've been just sometimes listening to people who do those homesteader shows, you know. I'm not like a prepper or a homesteader or anything like that. Heck, I live in the city, but I enjoy them. I like learning new things. I just find it interesting, and I like learning about survival stuff. I don't buy into any of that other weirdness, but hey, you know, you never know. It's like, you know, Boy Scouts, always be prepared. You never know what's going to happen. During all of this, when everybody was hoarding stuff, I really didn't feel hoardy. Just because I was thinking, oh, you know, this is a virus and these are going to be some weird times. So just in case we get sick or have to quarantine for a couple of weeks, I want to make sure that if we can't get out to get what we need, that we have what we need. And so I think what I stocked up on, and I didn't really stock up, it's just every time I went to the store, I bought a little bit more than I would normally buy. Like if I was going to buy, you know, a can of beets. I bought 2 cans of beets. And if I was going to buy, you know, a bag of rice, I bought 2 bags of rice. And every time I went to the store, I bought something different. And little by little, had a little bit of a pantry going that I usually have, but maybe it was just a little bit more than what I usually had. I did buy a lot of yeast and flour, but mostly because I knew we were going to be home a lot. I stress bake, and so I wanted to be able to make cakes and cookies and pasta and things that I like to make, and we used it. I broke out the bread maker, I made bread, I made tortillas, I learned to make naan, I made pita out on our grill in the backyard. Lots of stuff. Ooh, this is kind of cool. Yeah, I did a lot of baking over this COVID year. A lot more cooking than I usually do also. Which has been great because we've actually been eating healthier, but I have put on a lot of weight. Almost time to start gardening again. My goodness. This year went by so fast. Mostly, ooh, I bent my needle. I'm gonna do mostly herbs. I bent it because there is wire underneath that head anchoring in those horns, and I hit it a couple times. I think I'm gonna do mostly herbs this year, and any of my fruit trees, I'm going to try to harvest what there is on the trees and make sure I get it over to the food bank. Usually food banks, the one thing that they don't have a lot of is fresh stuff. I don't know if they'll take garden fruit, but I hope that they will. That would be really cool. Homeschool's kind of sucking right now. And I'm one of those people who could just be picking at this all day and never stopping until it's perfect. But you know how that goes. It'll never be perfect. This is not easy to do, and it's not one of my most favorite things to do. Especially if you get a baby that has a very thin eyelid and you don't have a lot of real estate to push eyelashes into. It gets frustrating because these eyelashes are a little bit short, as I may set them with a sponge, and I'll just let her eyelashes dry and set. And I am gonna get some babies dressed, and I am getting some of my practice alternative babies ready to get dressed and get their photographs taken. The one exception is this little fawn baby that I made. For some reason, she just doesn't feel like she is ready for prime time, so I'm gonna work on her a bit more. I'm thinking about doing something furry for her legs, I'm not sure, but I still feel like this needs more attention. So I'm gonna put her aside, put a little pin in that, and do that in a little while. But I am ready to get the other babies dressed. The first baby I'm gonna start off with is Aikiko. It's a story about a man who falls deeply in love with his wife. She dies young and tragically, and he promises to never leave her side. And he ends up living right where her grave is, and he tends to it every single day. He never remarries. His whole life is just about grieving her. And then one day he passes away, and the night before, the neighbors in the village see this big, beautiful white butterfly flying around and in his house. And they believe that this was his wife coming to get him and take him. And so I was inspired by that story, and I did a baby that looks nothing like a baby I've ever made before. And that's okay with me. She has a big, here, let me get her situated here so you can see her. She has a cloth diaper on because I wanted to costume her kind of vintage. And so I thought a disposable diaper might look a little strange. Her hands are very pink. Her feet are very, very pink. That's on purpose. Her skin is very, very white. That's on purpose. She has this little blue stripe here down in her chin. That's personal. She has very light, pale blue eyes, and her hair is something amazing. I wanted it to look ghosty. I didn't want it to look hair. I wanted it to look like vapor. And so I found this first shear mohair, and it's in its natural state. It's just been washed. It hasn't been colored. And it is like, I don't know, like duck down. It is so, so fluffy. I can't even explain it. And you can comb this hair down to make it look like baby hair, but I kind of like it like this. It looks like a little cloud around her head. I didn't give her any eyebrows or any eyelashes on purpose. And she just is what she is. She's an art doll. I absolutely love her. Now there's a little secret with this baby. She does have a little tiny bit of glow in the dark paint, just tiny, tiny little specks of it here and there. So when the lights go off, she continues to glow. Just a little, very subtle. And I want to dress her in some vintage clothes. I don't have anything that's vintage Japanese, but I did look at vintage Japanese babies online, vintage Japanese baby dolls, and they seem to kind of be in like more traditional kimono type clothes. That wasn't the direction I wanted to go. I wanted to go like 1940s. So I did find a gown online, a little vintage dressing gown. This is not Japanese, but it's white and has tiny little pink flowers. And it's the kind of period I was looking for about. This is probably maybe 1950s, maybe, I'm guessing. And this is a little vintage pink smock dress that I found that I really like. And this is just a regular pink snap side t-shirt, not vintage, but very light and pink. There's some socks. Here is another little sweater that was handmade, vintage. So what I'm going for is that very layered look you saw in China and Japan with babies. I know I'm not gonna nail it perfectly, but like I said before, I'm always just going for a vibe, and they would layer them up in like quilted jackets and layers of fabric. And I'm just gonna kind of play with that idea. I am going to center with this little kimono style little terry shirt that is really, really cute. I think that is vintage also. And so let's get her dressed. Again, I want her in lots of layers.